So I'm not going to lie, I have been running in my head all morning about how I'm going to do today's video. I don't know how long it's going to be, but ever since I said in the last video that I decided to talk about, or I wanted to talk about, my mental health condition called complex PTSD, I have been thinking of all the different ways of how I'm going to explain this. Like all mental illnesses, it's a very complex subject with lots of different sides. Some can be relatable, some may not be as relatable. But the purpose of sharing this here is, one, I want to raise more awareness for what complex PTSD is. I want to raise awareness of how damaging mental illnesses can be. And I think, this YouTube channel is all about that. This is why I'm creating a mental health vlog, is because I am, without a doubt, in the middle of one of the biggest mental health recovery periods of my life and going through a very big healing process at the moment. I will put a slight trigger warning here because I will get into some really, really deep stuff around childhood trauma, what can happen during childhood trauma, how that can affect your life. So if it is too difficult to listen to, I completely understand. But for convenience, I'm also going to be putting chapters at the bottom. So if there's one area that interests you a little bit more, then I'll notate that so you can just jump straight to this section. But here we go. So where to start? I only recently found out, after a severe mental breakdown, that I've been living with a mental illness called complex PTSD. Now, you may be familiar with what PTSD is. PTSD stands for post-traumatic stress disorder, and CPTSD is complex post-traumatic stress disorder. PTSD is created when effectively you go through a traumatic event in life, and it's not dealt with in a healthy way. When you deal with it in a way that effectively you bury what's happened without necessarily fully processing the emotions. Someone having a car crash, right, can create PTSD without the right therapy, without all of this kind of stuff. Trauma isn't something that is exclusive to a few subset of human beings. It's very important to express, all of us, I think, all have our own forms of trauma in life, some more severe than others, but trauma exists, right? It's a very big part of life. Or, well, actually, I'm probably speaking for my part. It's a very big part of my life. CPTSD is effectively PTSD on top of PTSD on top of PTSD on top of PTSD on top of PTSD. So if you have so many episodes of PTSD, so many episodes of trauma that all compact into each other, you get something called complex PTSD, which can create quite a severe impact on your life. Quite a severe impact is actually not doing it justice. It's a ridiculously big impact that it has on your life. It has an impact on you being able to have a career, relationships with your family, and building relationships with other human beings, including romantic relationships and friendships. It has a huge impact on how you look after yourself from a physical point of view and from a mental point of view. You end up sort of feeling like you're standing on the outside of the world looking in, and that's how I spent most of my life. Sorry, I know I'm a bit shaky. This is, I'm really trying to honor myself here, and I really hope this is helpful for people who don't understand this condition. But forgive me if I am a little bit shaky or nervous during this, because this is still very raw for me. And if I'm honest, I haven't really accepted that I live with this, because it's a lot to accept. That's one of the first things that's important to know about CPTSD. If you've got CPTSD, you might not realize you've got CPTSD, because it's a very hard thing to swallow. It's a very big pill to swallow. Imagine if a lot of difficulty that you went through in your life, a lot of challenge that almost seemingly seemed to be from above you or behind you, but you couldn't put your finger on where it was coming from, that was constantly burning everything that you did to the ground, that was wrecking your relationships, that stopped you from living a happy or fulfilling life, you recognize actually come from an event in childhood, or from multiple events in childhood, that have been erased from your memory because they're too painful to process or deal with. And that's what's happened. That's what's happened in my experience. So when I was a child, there were a number of different traumatic events that happened to me. You probably noticed the jaw right now. So my jaw is doing this. That is a symptom of anxiety. It's probably because there's a part of me that's quite nervous talking about this, but I'm just going to take my time and breathe through it. I was not able to create an emotional or healthy connection with anybody in my immediate family when I was a child. The conditions that I was growing up in did not give me a chance to develop a healthy relationship with the people around me and the people in my family. And as a result, I felt quite alienated, and I felt like I couldn't quite click with them. But it was a very difficult, we were all very, it's a very polarizing family. So it was very difficult to kind of integrate with them. And as a result, I felt like I couldn't share anything with anybody. So I would always sort of keep everything inside, because whenever I wanted to share things with my mum, she had so much going on in her head. She was away with the fairies, so to speak, and my dad was so busy with his work that I felt like I didn't matter to him. And then my brothers were teenagers, and my next brother up has learning difficulties. It creates an environment where I couldn't connect with other people. That created my first form of trauma, which is not being able to develop a healthy relationship or healthy connection with my family. And, if I'm perfectly honest, there's sometimes it makes me wonder if I had a family that was physically, say, abusive, or, I was raised in the middle of a battleground. I think, not comparing, but it would have made it easier to identify that my childhood was challenging, because on the surface, everything looked so lovely. I was raised in a middle-class family. I went to school. I live in the UK. We've got so many amazing things, but when it's got such a lovely coating on the surface, you don't realize the amount of dysfunction that's happening underneath. This is for anybody who's gone through their own upbringing. Just because if your upbringing was not completely disastrous on a physical level, or what you would see in a film or a TV show, it doesn't mean that you didn't have challenges in your upbringing. For so many years, I couldn't see it. In fact, I would defend my upbringing, and that was the first sign that there was something going on, is I would defend it religiously and say my upbringing was perfect and I was perfectly happy. And this is what happens with trauma is it kind of gets buried, it gets locked in a box, and it gets shoved into the corner over there somewhere. Anything that exposes that, you know what I mean? That you will fight against that. You will defend that, because no one can expose the reality that you're dealing with a lot of pain. And actually, when people used to say to me, I see you've been through so much pain. You've been through so much pain. You're so strong. I would very quickly shut them down and ignore them, because for most of my life, I didn't realize how much pain I was going through. I didn't realize how much pain I was going through. It just became the default, so I couldn't see it. Everybody else could, I couldn't. The second aspect of my trauma, and this is only what I started to realize recently, and this is where things get very, very complicated, is when I was a child, even though I can't identify the very specific age, I do believe I was between sort of 5 to 10 years old. I was sexually abused by a man. And this is this is something that is very, very complex, a very, very complex subject. And this is, something that I am in the middle of working through right now. Sexual trauma has made my life a living fucking hell. An absolute living hell. Because what it does is it makes you feel uncomfortable in your skin, in your own body, and it makes it very, very challenging to it makes it very, very challenging to be intimate with another human being, and any acts of sexuality or sexual experience you look at with pure disgust and hatred, including your own body. So it fucks you up. It really does. There is nothing more sacred in the human experience than physical intimacy, touch, or sex with another human being. It's a very sacred, it is the core of human connection. And when your first experience of that is done by someone who's much older than you, that you trust, and without your consent, it throws a lot of wires in your life into it throws a lot of things in your life into disarray. It breaks a lot of things. Now, you combine that with the fact that I didn't manage to create an emotional connection with any of my family from a young age, and then after that event happened, I couldn't talk to anyone about it. And actually, even talking on this camera and sharing this with you guys, I appreciate is a form of therapy, because before, in the middle of last year, that's when it hit. Like a timer had gone off in my mind, and a memory that was always covered up I wouldn't say uncovered, because the difficult part is I still can't experience the raw memory. I have night terrors. I have terrors at night of the most horrendous sensations. They're just the purest evil under your skin. And I constantly get nightmares of someone smiling or laughing and touching me in inappropriate places, and I can't do anything about it. If you're still listening, thank you. This has been very difficult. I think you can start to see perhaps the point of this video is to talk about trauma and to talk about the impact that trauma can have on your life. And I can't speak for you. I can't speak for anybody other than myself. But I know how much it's impacted mine. For all the days that I have been examining other human beings and just trying to understand why it looks so easy for them, when every single day of my life has been a battle internally. And I will go into this in the next video, as I'm going to talk about the inner critic, which is one of the most there's layers to this, and the inner critic is one of the things that makes each day a battle, because you're effectively fighting yourself every day to do anything, to eat, to live, to work, to play, to relax. You are fighting yourself all the time, and this is what happened as part of this condition. I'm doing my best. That's my inner critic right now. That's you're not saying that. I know you're not saying. Okay, I'm gonna stop it today. I've done enough, I think. Thank you for listening. If you have listened, this has been really helpful for me, and has been a really I hope it's also been helpful for you. Whether you have this condition, you're not alone. There's another human being out there who has it too. And if you haven't got this condition, then you also can learn about it if mental health interests you. I don't know. In the next part, I'm going to talk about the inner critic. I'm going to talk about self-analysis and picking yourself apart in every fabric of your humanity until, overthinking, all of that kind of stuff. But for now, I will rest, because there was a lot to process. Thank you.